Good afternoon, and welcome to AIADA's AutoTalk. I'm your host, Rachel Soleimani. Today, we continue our webinar series surrounding COVID-19 and the global pandemic's effect on the automotive retail market. Before I introduce today's presenter, a few quick reminders as always. Everyone that is registered for today's program will receive a copy by early next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the lower right side of your interface under the Q&A bar, and our presenter will try his best to get to them all. Now join me in welcoming Dr. Rikin Patel. Dr. Patel is a physician who has spent 11 years in sports medicine and orthopedic care. He's the co-founder and chief operating officer of Ride Clean, a mobile vehicle care and fleet services. Doc, take it away.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for that introduction. Pleasure to have you all here with me. I'm sure the topic may have motivated you to join this afternoon and spend some time with us, but excited to have you. As Rachel mentioned, practicing physician for 11 years, and you're like, well, what the heck is a physician doing telling me how to take care of cars? Well, interestingly enough, having been a part of Ride Clean and in the cleaning business for so many years, we think we know everything we need to know, and then you have a pandemic. And here I am kind of merging what I've learned in practice of keeping people healthy and allowing people to move safely, that I've got to do our best to be assistive in getting people moving in their mode of transportation. The human body needs to move and cars need to move. And what I've learned is that a lot of how we are going to get people to safely move again in any mode of transportation, and today we're going to talk about vehicles, we need to talk about what we can do to maintain the health of our car. And I didn't realize until the pandemic that how easy it is for our cars, to make us sick. I've always been a big proponent in your own healthcare, in your own body, that a lot of preventing illness and disease starts with prevention. And I think, if you're joining this call, you're thinking about how can I, get my business moving again? How can I confidently reach my customers? And I hope you're also considering what can I do to contribute so that we can all move forward together with this globally. And I think that's so important to keep in mind as we go over this, is that we all need to do our part. And I think we can all significantly impact the health and hygiene of vehicles. And we can do that in a sustainable fashion. And in doing that, we can have a positive impact on the world, and also it'll have a positive impact on your business. So we're going to carry you through a few things. And I think it's important to really understand one fundamental difference that it took a while for everyone to understand clearly. As I mentioned, since 2013, when we founded Ride Clean as a mobile car service provider focused on as being a detail shop on wheels, and we were really focused on being eco-conscious. We were cleaning vehicles with steam. And we thought that was the most cutting edge thing that we could be doing for the industry, and we were able to deliver our services anywhere. But I think what's important for everyone to understand is that we need to really be focused on the definition of what it means to clean, sanitize, and disinfect. And as I mentioned before, I've spent time working on the skeletal frame. The car is much more, as complex a chassis as the human skeleton. And we've got to understand what areas of that body we need to be treating in order to promote safe vehicle hygiene. And so let's talk about sanitization and disinfection. And I think the most important thing to understand is, what do I mean by when I say cleaning? Cleaning is actually the act of removing dirt and germs. And we do that with a lot of different cleaning agents today, and we make things look really nice. But have we actually solved the problem of killing germs? And you're not going to be able to do that unless you are using a chemical at this point, and there are other things that we will go into that are options to actually kill germs. And when you are killing germs, you are disinfecting them or you are sanitizing them. So what does sanitization mean? So sanitization means you're killing 99.9% of germs bacteria, viruses on the area treated. Now let's remember, cars have multiple areas that we need to treat. We have hard surfaces, soft surfaces, we have ventilation systems. There's a lot of things that we need to consider when we talk about, what it means to sanitize a vehicle. And that typically, and I will caution that this depends on what the manufacturer requirements are to the chemical, is it really depends on two things. The main difference between sanitization and disinfection is how much you kill. Okay, so if you look at disinfection, again, you're killing germs and you're killing 99.99999% of germs, bacteria, viruses on the area treated. Okay, well, do I need that difference? Depends, right? Depends. If you look at something and I said, hey, that surface has 1 million virus particles. If I killed 99.9% of them, I would still have 1,000 left. So what I say in this area is it's really about risk mitigation. What are we doing to decrease the risk as much as we can? But let's be honest, nothing is going to be virus free or germ free. And the difference of how you typically get to a sanitization versus a disinfection is in what we call the dwell time or contact time that we allow the substance that we're using, the chemical, to remain in contact with the surface. Now, these are ranges that I've provided. The manufacturer label is what you really want to focus on. But sanitization typically right now in the industry involves a portion of cleaning and a portion of disinfection. And disinfection is really just spraying and allowing something to coat the surface, typically wet, and allow it to air dry. A lot of people might be hearing about it in the industry. Well, what is antimicrobial? I'm hearing about this barrier, and I'm hearing that I can use this substance and it's going to last for months or years. Let's be very, very cautious on what we put a stake in the ground on around this. There is antimicrobial options in the market currently. What are they actually doing? So you see that I've put biocide versus biostatic. And what biostatic means is that we're creating a barrier. And what does that barrier do? That barrier allows us to protect and inhibit the growth of odor-causing germs, mold, and mildew. And how that works on a little bit more scientific level is that it creates an inhospitable surface. And it creates sometimes a surface that is charged. And by attracting germs to it, it actually has that barrier molecule actually then cuts and destroys the germs. But it cannot, okay, continuously kill. That is the piece that I want everyone to understand. And if you take anything away from here, is that we don't have a continuous kill option in market today. And don't let anyone convince you otherwise. But there's still a lot that you can do to make sure that you are, again, truly focused on decreasing the germ load in vehicles to decrease the risk. Many of us, some people ask me about, how's this relevant? And this is going to be really difficult to do. There's so many areas, especially for dealers, to consider on touch points of their vehicles, or what am I going to do? Well, many of us scoffed at the increased security measures that we had in TSA after 9/11. We have to do so many more things just to get through security, and now it's become the new norm. And I'm here to tell you that I think we're headed towards a new norm, and where we will settle, it'll take time to figure out exactly where we settle, but the transportation industry will need to focus on hygiene. Because a lot of what we've seen spread so rapidly is because of lack of hygiene. So, let's reduce fear. Let's build trust in evaluating your options. I've went over sanitizing versus disinfecting. I explained the difference. And do people really care? I think as we go through, you're going to learn that yes, customers care. They're going to care now, and we're always going to be thinking about this into the future. And I think we'll talk about options that may emerge in the future that makes this easier than it is today to do. But those are things that we really need to focus on and thinking about. We're going to clean the vehicle, but am I going to go that extra mile in performing some type of sanitization or disinfection when I do, or independently? We have to be eco-conscious. People come and they tell us, yeah, this is fine. You can spray it here or you can use it here. There's no issues, but we have to understand that do these cleaning products have any impact on the environment? Let's remember that the majority of disinfectants are pesticides and they can be hazardous to health. Very important when you put this in the vehicle is this going to be adverse to the occupant? Do I truly understand the amount of time after which this is applied that someone can touch a surface, breathe the air on the surface? This is very important. We need to look at things that are considered human safe. Often people care about pets, pet safe, and also let's think about food safe. And a lot of the options that exist in market are actually considered food safe as well. And I talked a little bit about protection longevity, and does it provide surface protection? Does it provide surface disinfection for hard and soft surfaces? Does it allow me to cleanse the air system? That is a very important component that we don't consider. And in fact, the ventilation units are often an area of buildup of a lot of germs and especially fungus. And I think what's also important is we're addressing this issue now because of COVID-19. We probably should have been addressing this a lot longer and earlier because it's been well known previously that vehicles can make people sick. There's a lot of data around that. And so, what I want to remind everybody is do not be fooled by someone who says, well, it's going to continuously kill. That does not exist. And I don't want you to be fooled into that. And you need to understand, where do I go for my main resource? And I will still say that I think the resource that I recommend continues to be that guidelines that are outlined by the CDC. The CDC, has an approved list of chemicals that are known to cover emerging viruses, and that's the important piece, including SARS-CoV-2. And also on that list, they recommend other products such as possibly diluting household bleach, using alcohol-based solutions that are 70% or more. But when you think about this, you also have to think about, well, what's my process and approach to the vehicles? I have a solution, but how am I going to utilize it? We as a company have gotten approached about, what if it's a COVID positive vehicle? I know that someone with COVID was in that vehicle. There's a lot to think about around that. And sometimes that's not the best area for you to focus on in a dealership. Other times it is, because if you focus on process, you will have something that will keep your workers safe and you will decrease the risk to your workers. And you're able to actually, safely, with the right protective equipment or timing your vehicle entry, come up with a process that can address that safely. And I think it's important here. I'm going to pause, to talk about sort of this list, okay? And I want to highlight something around bleach and alcohol solutions. They're the quick fix, right? Easy to find. They're probably cheaper than anything else that someone has come to you with the market, but they are and have been known to decimate the finishes of vehicles. And we have to be very cautious around how much or how often we use them. You may see it, well, nothing happened the first time I used it, but think about when you do it repetitively. Are you going to start to see something? And when you see something, it's probably already too late. So you want to think about that sometimes the products that you're bringing, instead of thinking about a quick fix, what's the best long-term solution that I can provide that I know that is going to protect the asset along the way? Because, maybe second to people's homes, vehicles are the most important asset to them. So I think it's important, my guidelines in general, that when we go through this is look at this and say, okay, I'm looking for an EPA approved product. Someone comes to you and says, hey, this is what we think you should use. Great. Check this EPA list. Is it EPA approved? Yes. Then take your time to read the directions that the manufacturer of the chemical recommends on how you use it, what you use it for, and also what claims you can make with it. It's very difficult. Sometimes you have to be careful about trusting suppliers. And it's not that they're trying to be misleading. I'm not here to say that. And what I'm saying is that sometimes they don't fully understand either how important understanding the details around what we're doing today and how important that is. And so you need to make yourself the expert or align yourself with resources that can make you an expert and are willing to supply you that knowledge, the training for yourself and your people so that you can stand behind what you're doing. I do generally recommend that, that the surfaces be pre-cleaned. What that does is it wipes away germs, which is good. That mechanical process is important. Okay, you should adhere to the contact times that is recommended by the manufacturer, and then you should sort of, wear gloves and make sure that you are doing hand washing as recommended by the CDC. And I think it's important, to understand something. And I talked a little bit about cleaning before, is that when you clean a surface and you mechanically wipe something away, you're also making the appearance better. And if we don't do a pre-cleaning step, you could disinfect a surface, and if you didn't actually clean it before and there was a grime or coffee mark or something on there, the disinfectant or that sanitization step where you apply something and you let it sort of air dry, you're not going to be able to leave that surface clean. So that's why I think that pre-clean of the surface is important as well. And there's a lot of factors that go into how you incorporate this into your business, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, again, that's the approach. That's the approach the CDC recommends. The other piece that you want to think about is store your chemicals correctly. Okay, I can tell you that if you're not thinking about that, if you leave them out in overexposed areas in heat, and you're not adhering to that, you can affect the efficacy of it. The other piece that's come up a lot, and sometimes we are recommending as well, is there are OEM lists, on what they recommend and don't recommend. And I think dealers, you're going to find yourself in a balancing act between, what the OEMs recommend, because they have to think about protecting the materials and warranties of what they've delivered to you, versus what your business needs in order to protect itself and kind of restore customer confidence. So, you find yourself sometimes in the middle there. And I think, aligning yourself with knowledgeable resources can help guide you through that process. There are products in industry that have been out being used on vehicles to complete these processes for over 7 or 8 years. You just have to make sure you're doing your homework to make sure you're aligned with the right product. I want to talk briefly on this slide as well. I think it's important to understand what our current COVID cure times. I get this question a lot. The NIH and the New England Journal of Medicine released a paper which talked about, well, how long will the virus stay active on certain surfaces? And we know in aerosol or in the air, it's about 3 hours. This is a very, very important point. And I think that's why you've seen areas like Dallas, recommending very quickly that on test drives, vehicles needed to be disinfected in between each turn. Because again, if something is in the air for 3 hours, okay, potentially you have to be careful if that car goes back out. So you need to start thinking about, well, how does time factor into this? I'll just kind of go over in general the approach to other surfaces. Copper is typically looked at 4 hours. Plastic and stainless steel, 2 to 3 days. Cardboard, up to 24 hours. But again, that is not a hard, fast rule. They've checked out some of the cruise ships that were known to have virus, and they're finding viruses even after 17 days. So just relying on, hey, we let that vehicle sit for 3 days, no problems. If that's the way you decide to direct and take your business, that's fine. I think you're doing something towards risk mitigation, but the impact I can imagine on you being able to, run your business efficiently, it's probably not going to be worth it. And so these are things that you need to take into consideration as you put a process around this. And I do honestly recommend that you do your best, okay, to streamline your product and have a simple process. Because If you have too many products and you're putting different products in different people's hands, they're doing things differently, and you're not getting a consistent result. But if you streamline your product to one or two products and you put a simple process around this, a lot of these disinfectants, the best ones in class, do not take a long time to apply. And I know what's very important for a lot of dealers is cycle time. If you're going to do this in the service delivery bay and you need to do it, you can't have someone tied up doing this process for 15, 20 minutes. It's got to be quick. It's got to be efficient. So that's important. And the other thing, I've seen a lot of this, and this concerned me over the weekend, is I see the countries opening up, and that's what I want. I want to see that. Everybody wants to see that, but we've really got to still focus on people spacing. We've really got to focus on that, because the more and more I learn right now is, yes, we are at risk from contacting surfaces. We are at risk from certain areas that we go to. But the biggest thing is, if we are too close to one another and not protecting ourselves, that is where you can run into the bigger problems. And so as you reopen, your dealerships and you have people, let's still be very conscious about practicing spacing. You can still be very effective in everything that you do if you focus on processes of people of spacing people in your dealerships. So why is this important? What's the big deal? And I mentioned this before. Vehicles have always been a vector for germs. And now, with contactless delivery becoming the new norm and vehicle hygiene essential for customer and team member safety, there's never been a better time to prioritize vehicle sanitization and disinfection. You have the opportunity to really win customer trust by delivering disinfected vehicles. You have the ability to provide peace of mind to customers and team members. And like I've mentioned before in the beginning, you can do your part to help curb the spread of bacteria and emerging viruses. It's amazing to think that 700 different strains of bacteria living in the interior of a car, and that it's over 2,100 times dirtier than the screen of a cell phone. The steering wheel is also 6 times dirtier than the average cell phone screen. And what tends to happen, and what we realizes is that odor, okay, is really a sign of a lot of germs in the vehicle. And a lot of us have focused on odor mitigation. Well, take care of the smell. Well, in order to take care of the smell, you need to eliminate the germs. And that's very, very important to realize, that as you go through this process, is that you're doing a lot more than just taking care of the problem today, but you're actually focused on being able to impact the odor of vehicles that haven't been taken care of properly, because no one focused on disinfecting the germs that were causing it. Kind of went over the why and looked over the how. So I think it's very important, and you can really start to position your businesses in a way that differentiates yourself. Okay, you can start to explain to the customers and your work staff why you are doing it. You're doing it for their benefit. And I can tell you that, I think that people, businesses that take interest in creating customer value, people are going to remember that. And they're going to remember it now. And if you talk about, people talk about cost of customer acquisition, what does it take me to gain a customer? Well, what do we focus on most, when you have a dealership, is you want that customer to come back to you. That's why I go to the most beautiful service bays. They're focused on service. And if right now you focus on going that extra mile to deliver to your customer, either a service turn, test drive, or on vehicle delivery, that you're concerned about the sanitization of their vehicle, that's what they're going to remember. Because right now, that's what's at the forefront of their mind. You want to be proactive in telling them what you are using. You want to be transparent. You want to let them know, where are you applying it. Listen, if you're only wiping the hard surfaces, that's the decision you choose to make. But let's remember that when people get in and out of cars, they sit on soft surfaces, they sit on cloth seat, and a lot of transmission just occurs from that type of contact. And I think that, again, goes back to, when you service the vehicle or you're applying disinfection, what's your process around it? Because if you have someone getting in the car to sit down and wipe the steering wheel or wipe the dash and lean across the console and wipe the other side, you're actually cross contaminating. You need to have a process where you can actually not have to worry about that and feel like the surfaces can all get cleaned and sanitized in a way that you don't have that risk. We talked about, what are you using, where are you applying it, and how are you doing it? What's the process around that? And I think this is very important. This is a good time to consider it as things ramp back up and before they get, before we see ourselves back to the new norm, that we put this process in place because it's much easier to do it now, as things are starting to speed up versus doing it at full speed. Because at full speed, we forget. I don't think the importance of it is going to go away. You have the opportunity to promote and educate, communicate the product's benefits and cleaning process with the customer to build confidence and make them feel comfortable again, because that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take for people to start really moving again, and that's what we're focused on as a company to assist across the transportation industry. And it also shows leadership. I think people know that there's always an effect that that leaders start the process and then other people join. And I think there's a lot of solutions that if you align with the right people right now that can guide you through how to lead this process, as long as you're willing to take a few extra steps. And I want to tell you that from our perspective, what we're seeing is that we have a very challenging road ahead. This is not just an issue for dealers. This is an issue for the auto and transportation industry as a whole. And everyone needs to be reevaluating their businesses in this industry. And I think if we spend a little bit of time and focus on looking at common processes that can support one another, we can support the industry as a whole. The rideshare industry is really struggling with trying to find ways to get people to use rideshare again. And the reason is because people don't have trust around the hygiene of the vehicle. And we know that rideshare fleets do promote car sales. We need that industry to continue to thrive. We've seen rental companies having a lot of difficulty. We can't tell you how many people have expressed that in the rental space, they just don't have confidence that the vehicle they're going to rent is going to be safe. And I think a lot of OEMs are being proactive in providing guidance, and I think that's really important. But this is a very challenging road, and I think it's a good time to start to work together towards that common goal. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of this stuff in the headlines. We're going to see a lot of challenges, but it's not something that we can't get through together. So let's talk about the short and long-term impact on the automotive industry. Very, very interesting data is coming from a lot of recent market research, and that is that 83% of customers say it's extremely or very important to disinfect vehicle surfaces after a service appointment or test drive. 83%. Anecdotally, I'll be honest, I canceled my recent services at my dealership on a recall because I wasn't sure what process they were going to take. And I think a lot of people are thinking the same thing. And I can tell you there's probably no shortage of cars that need to be serviced. And I think promoting what you are doing on the service, pickup, and delivery of a vehicle will have very, very positive impact on restoring customer confidence. 68% of consumers say it's extremely or very important to disinfect the air of the vehicle after a service or test drive. It's much more challenging, but I can tell you that there are products that exist in a gaseous phase that can go through the ventilation system and again, decrease the risk. I'm not here to say that something exists that can, 100% disinfect the entire ventilation system, but that's the most important piece. And everyone's going to ask, well, how do you know? And I'm here to tell you that there is no good lab practice to validate disinfection. When you're talking about air in certain of these surfaces, it's extremely difficult. But if we follow the manufacturer guidelines, you will be able to, make the claim that you've done what was necessary based on what the manufacturer guidelines were for the chemical to treat that surface. And so, describe what you performed but don't make promises on the accomplishment, because that's you're providing something, but there's no promises on what the accomplishment is. But you know with confidence what you did by following the instructions allows you to have either sanitization or disinfection depending on how you follow the process. And what's interesting here is that we've got to look at this at every point of where the vehicle touched. Dealers, we talked a little bit about dealers. We talked about rideshare providers. We're talking about fleet operators. We're talking about rental companies. We're talking about parking operators. We're talking about vehicle delivery networks. One of the things that I've heard from a couple of companies in the vehicle delivery network is that the drivers are concerned about getting in and out of vehicles. What's interesting is that people don't realize that there are solutions. There's actually common chemicals that can be used at every touch point, and solutions do exist where you can keep it very, very simple. And that's what I'm encouraging you to explore before you make a quick decision based on what you think fits the short-term need. So what's potentially the new normal at a dealership or away from the dealership? So 2/3 of consumers say they are delaying vehicle service, say that the vehicle being sanitized and disinfection would make them more comfortable with getting their vehicle serviced. That's a lot. So at the dealership, health protocols are being implemented and will likely last. I think dealers should promote their enhanced vehicle disinfection products and procedures to assure customers and team members that vehicle hygiene is a top priority. Away from the dealership, safely pick up and deliver. We should be able to deliver sold vehicles to the consumer with confidence, test drive vehicles with customers, pick up vehicles for service and delivery. But we need to be able to outline and articulate that to our end user, because that's what's going to get them to buy and use the services more when they have an understanding. And that's what people need right now. They need education and understanding and confidence around what you're doing. And you have to have the ability to sanitize and disinfect anywhere. Provide peace of mind and assurance that at each touch point on a vehicle, whether it's on delivery to the dealership, during a test drive, during delivery to a customer, during a service call, or on a lease return, okay, you're able to know that there's a process that exists that where you can sanitize the vehicle or disinfect the vehicle should you choose. Drivers want to know when they get in and out of cars, okay, can they disinfect their vehicle fully, or do they need to, again, maybe they're concerned about disinfecting touch points. Do those options exist? Is it easy? Those are the questions that we're getting and that people are asking. We need to have a solution for that. And so how do you evaluate, what you're when you're looking at a service provider, how do you evaluate? More than 2/3 of US vehicle owners said they would pay $20 or more for vehicle sanitization. If I told you that there are products in market, and many of them, that could be applied with a cycle time of 3 minutes or less, that would require the work of a worker at 3 minutes or less, and then have the ability to basically disinfect the vehicle, parts off surfaces, and cleanse the air ventilation system within 10 minutes, but the only time required was 3 minutes to apply, and the other one was just sort of the dwell or contact time. And someone said they're willing to pay $20 for vehicle sanitization. Not only are you have the ability to provide value to your customers, you actually have the potential of providing a new business service line should you choose. Or you may choose it to say, hey, this is actually a value that I'm willing to give to my customer, okay, and talk about the value that I'm giving to them, which again goes back to the customer experience and customer retention. And so, there's the ability to have on-site locations where you can take cars for sanitization, disinfection. You can have mobile services. There are many companies involved in the mobile space. There's enterprise solutions where you have the ability to bring those solutions, products, and best practices onto your site and apply them and associate with brands. And there are many brands that exist. A lot of companies are now offering the do-it-yourself kit, where there's a kit that can be given to the customer, can be given to driver networks so that they can apply it, because sometimes the use case involves that it needs to be done at the touch point and there's not the ability to initiate mobile services or do it at a fixed location. But those options, they all do exist. And I think a lot of things have come very quickly to market. I think my recommendation with it all is to take some time to make sure you're evaluating all the options that exist. We all need to be together focused on a cleaner environment for our cars. And I think sometimes, you may find yourself incorporating a slightly more expensive product than you thought, but if you're able to meet your checklist, and a lot of the things that I discussed on this webinar today, should be on your checklist, I am very, very strongly encouraged that this solution can be easily brought to a dealership without causing anybody too much hardship. And I recommend that you go through that evaluation process, you spend some time around it, don't disregard it. It is going to become valuable. And as it becomes more and more valuable, I think you want to find yourself being in front of it, not behind it. So with that, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate Ada asking me to join and provide my sort of my viewpoint on this collectively. I hope you've gained something valuable, and I'll open this up for questions.
Dr. Patel, thanks for speaking with us today. This information is so important as we move forward and start to see more storefronts open up. So we just really appreciate you coming on and educating us. Again, to those on the line, you'll be receiving a recording of this webinar by early next week. To continue our COVID-19 webinar series, join us back here tomorrow, May 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern, as Tom Contos, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at CAR, discusses today's wholesale market. Be on the lookout for promotions on how to register. For more information about AIADA, visit aiada.org. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, everyone.